What does it mean to master the game of life? Like any game, it requires a fundamental understanding and application of the rules. But living in today's on-demand society is making this nearly impossible, as our attention is increasingly being fought over and monetized by others. Will Moore's mission is to help you hit the reset button by providing a new set of game rules based on time-proven universal principles and modern science. To gamify your life by making it fun and addictive to replace your habits in the 5 core areas of your life proven to lead to true happiness. Ready, player one?
Hey, there we are.
There you are. It worked.
I really exist.
So, I was thinking you're on, we've done it. Do you want to just go right into it, or do you want to wait?
It's up to you. I'm good. I'm ready.
I feel like we should take advantage of the fact that technology is on our side right now.
Can you hear me okay? Because I'm using a microphone on the phone. I could put headsets in, but every time you move around the headsets, you'll hear some sounds.
Yeah, you may want to try the headsets. Let's try the headsets just to get a little bit clearer audio, because I'm sure the people viewing, it's not as big of a deal, but when you're listening to a podcast.
This is the second time in 7 years I've done an interview on the phone.
All right. Well, I'm happy to be your second. Yeah, I mean, so yeah, we do this. This is how we do them, because that way we can do a live, and people can watch now and see them, and then we can also do. And then we cut up clips, we put them back on for later, both video and audio, and then we also have it go to the podcast. So the way our system is set up is this way. So thanks for making it happen.
Absolutely. How's my sound now?
Oh, much better. That's really good.
Oh, there we go. All right.
So tell us a bit about yourself, Tony. Give us a little bit of your backstory and how you got to this point and where you're headed to help the world here.
Well, thank you for the lead. And I guess as so many people have said, especially people I've interviewed, I have failed a lot, Will. I have failed so many times. I'm a double PhD in how to lose and how to have a disaster. And it's because of that when I had my last issue, I was just really fast, kind of bring it forward. I've done many businesses. I've had my own lead generation company for 7 years, and I did really well at it. But just like you had with the madness of a couple of years ago, there were federal protocols, federal mandates that came down, Will, and 4 times in 7 years, 4 times. All of a sudden, I'll give you an example. I go into my office on a Monday. One of my clients, I'm doing $1 million a year in sales on. I had multiple clients. They canceled. Why? Well, another federal mandate, protocol, rule came down, and they realized that they couldn't do marketing the way that they couldn't accept marketing services anymore. They had to retool. I was a marketing company. We did lead generation. They canceled. All my clients disappeared. 4th time in 7 years that something just impacted and took the business down to its knees. Yeah, I could have rebuilt, but I got tired of it. So I did a couple things. One is I looked for something I could do. And when I kept hearing this word, Will, I kept hearing this word. What's this word? It's podcast. It's like, what? Oh, I know that. I can do that. I'm Italian. I can talk. So I started podcasting. But I wanted to, I wanted to learn, and so I jumped in, I learned, and I started podcasting, and I created something that I call today the Vision Map, and I teach people how to do it. It's 7, 8, I think there's 8 steps now, I have to count, where you put your vision together, your purpose, your objective, and you really get it focused all the way down to your daily things to do. I really gamified how to run my business, and I had never podcasted before, never did it. And and I'm going to tell you what I've accomplished on it really fast, but I can say that there's some 2-something million people podcasting today. And a couple years ago, the failure rate of podcasters was around 85% per Blueberry, I believe, or was it, or Libsyn. And what that means is the average podcaster would do 6, 7, 8, 9 shows I know, I've seen them come and go.
Yeah.
And then they disappear, Will. And it's even a word in the dictionary called pod fade. So I created the vision map to get through that and beat the odds of to success. And okay, so here's the drum roll. 7 years, I've surpassed 35 million listens of the Tony Durso show. Downloads, I get a lot of downloads. It works really well, and I can say it's easy now, but it's not been. It was tough. But even with the madness and things shutting down, I still continued the business because this map how I gamified it really took me through any bad times.
Well, I love it, and thank you for throwing in the gamification. I love that. Right. So just for those listening that aren't 100% familiar with it, the way I look at gamify, there's a lot of different definitions. The way I like to look at it is basically we're all kids deep down inside. We all have this wonder, passion, enthusiasm, or at least we all had it at one point. I think a lot of us tend to lose it as we get a little bit older and life gets in the way and things start happening. And then all of a sudden it's like, I need to do this, I need to do this. And you're forgetting about what life is about. And gamification to me is a way to sort of connect back into that wonder and that passion by kind of tricking your brain into doing the things that you will make you truly happy, and to use kind of little life hacks to sort of reduce the friction along the way to help you to move the needle forward and use your personal DNA, your personality, your likes, your strengths, your passions, preferences, these things to actually help you to move the needle. And it's kind of a neat thing. The more I'm getting into it, and it all stems from behavioral science and habits is the basic gist of, to me, that's changing your habits is everything. And, in order to do that, you've got to really kind of say, okay, well, willpower doesn't work. Diets don't work. People have been doing them for forever and ever, and New Year's resolutions don't work. Why? Like what? And so using some of this stuff that's out there already with science and these companies like Facebook and, TikTok and social media companies that are using these sort of tricks to get us addicted to their products, but to use that to sort of get addicted to improving your life, right? So can you tell us maybe with that definition stated, which I know it's a bit of a mouthful, but in general, what kind of things are you doing in your life to gamify, to reduce the friction, to build these habits, some of these secrets that you figured out over the years of like, wow, like this really isn't as hard as it needs to be. And if I do it like this, it makes it a lot easier to share with our viewers.
Well, the term gamify is really good. And when you first invited me to the show, I guess it's a matter of my age. I'm thinking, gamify? I don't have it. How do I take my business and put it into a game? So you kind of really have to think about, okay, I know I'm slow on some things, but to me, I look at it as a methodology and a system of how to move things, which my vision map really puts together. And it's that mindset. It's the first thing is that mindset is, and when I work, I mean, I'm focused. I'm all in on what I do. I zone into all of my work, and I really have that mindset that I'm going to create something and figure something out and make it happen. And in that mindset, it's not that there's no success or there's no failure, but there's a figure out or how to get this thing done. I mean, come on, I knew zero people. I didn't know any entrepreneurs. Today, I interview millionaires and billionaires on who tell how they've made it to success, and they tell their story. I've had you on my show as well. I didn't know any. I had zero audience. I never podcasted. I never was on the radio. I didn't know any of this before. So it's not a matter of, I don't see things as a failure. You got to see things as, how do I get this done? And if you look at that, there's no such thing as a failure because you just keep going and keep going until you get it done.
Yeah, well, so right. I mean, I would say, you know, mindset is one of these main areas, these core areas of our lives that we want to make sure we're gamifying, we're moving forward. You got the 5 here. And what you just said, persistence is one of the key elements of your mindset. Just if you can develop this, like you said, I mean, at the beginning of the show, 80% people that do podcasts, you know, don't make it. And that's anything, that's any business, right? That's people jump in, they go, oh, that looks easy. And then they get into it and they're like, oh, this is not so easy. And then most just trickle away. And that's, you know, survival of the fittest. I mean, it's good that it's that way, because if everybody was doing it, if everybody was persistent and following through, it'd be a much more difficult environment, right? So in a way it's kind of good, but at the same time, you want to be one of those people, one of that smaller percentage people that just does not quit and follows through no matter what. And you and I'm sure can both attest to the fact in life, like that really is like 99% of it. But you got to combine that with doing something you really love or passionate about and, you know, are into. Because if you're just trying to push through on something that you're not really liking and you feel like, oh, well, this is a good way to make money, and you're pushing and pushing, you're going to run out of gas.
Absolutely.
But what gives you that ability, right, is if it's in your soul and you're like, I know that I can do this. This is what I was here. This is what I'm on earth to do. That helps you push through.
I can say just going after the money just doesn't do it, because I've seen people crash and burn. They go after the money, you know, they do whatever, but there's no structure there. There's no really good building there, because you got to go beyond the money. That's how I believe it. And you mentioned your passion. You got to like it. You got to want it. You got to say, hey, I can do it. You know, let's take a survey. How many people have become a millionaire by totally hating their job and not wanting anything to do it? It just seems to be like an oxymoron. It just doesn't fit.
Right.
And perhaps I'm going to be a little silly, but to gamify it, there's 3 ways to get things done. Number 1, keep at it. Number 2, keep at it. Number 3, keep at it. And that's just the mindset. It's just, you know, there's no failure. It's just, there's only success, but you got to keep at it. And it takes some work to do, because, you know, there's distractions. And I think other parts that we're going to talk about help get those distractions out of the way. Because some people sit at their computer, they'll literally play games or do things or get involved in videos. And for me, I'm focused on, I've got a podcast, I got to bring in guests, I got to do my interviews, I got to bring in sponsors. It's focus on what I've got to get done.
Yep, totally. And so I would say, you know, one of the questions I'd asked you pre-interview, which I was reading your response and you weren't quite sure, habits. What are your top habits that you've developed that have helped you? I would say just listening to you, right? This perseverance, this persistence, is just the ability to push through. Because right, there's a lot of different ways to look at it. There's a lot of different analogies. You know, the air is always crisper up top where nobody else is, right? The fruit is always sweeter on that far branch that nobody else is climbing to. It's the ability to just really do those things and push through those tougher times is what really what makes a difference in anybody's life, especially for an entrepreneur, because it's a tough life trying to start your own business. We all know it. There's a zillion failures, as you started the show with, that you're going to go through. And if you're not able to go, okay, that sucked, but what did I learn from it? And I'm going to move on, and I'm going to take that failure and I'm going to use it to propel me forward versus, okay, well, I knew I couldn't do it anyways, right? It's the growth owner mindset versus the fixed victim mindset.
Absolutely. And you can tell that this is the second time I've ever done a video interview, because I didn't put any lights on, and I'm sitting in shadows, and I'm like, oh man.
Oh, don't worry about it.
So I apologize for that.
Oh, don't worry about it. That's a lot of my guests have that.
I did shave, but I have a shadow.
Yeah, you got the shadow with the shave. Well, so let's get into your system, and let's talk about, you know, so I'd asked you if you did a master class tomorrow, what would it be on? You said creating your vision and making it a reality with the vision map. So let's talk about how you help people do that.
actually launching, being in this business for 7 years, I've never done a webinar. I've been on webinars, but I'm going to do my first webinar. It's going to be free, and I'm going to teach the vision map in pieces. And the way it is it started when I started podcasting 7 years ago, trying to find how to keep things going. And I read a book called Beach Money by Jordan Adler, which really changed everything for me. Chapter 2 or 3, I'll just tell you his story really fast. It's been many years since I've read the book. I think I've got it. He was a failure. He had no job. He had no house. He had no girlfriend. Maybe lost his job or just had a poor job. He was just in trouble. So he goes out into the park and he starts writing down what his future is. What does he want to be? What does he want to see? What does he want to accomplish? What would his future look like? You know, you guys have heard this in different forms. Well, he wrote it up and he spent a couple hours doing that. And then he'd periodically look at it from time to time, and then forgot all about it. And then one day, a couple years later, Jordan Adler's moving and he sees this piece of paper and he reads it and he gets down on the floor and he starts crying. He starts crying. Why? Why was he crying? Well, because he's moving into a brand new house. He's got the girlfriend of his dreams. He's got the job of his dreams. He's making back then, it was like 80s, 90s, he's making $100,000 a month. I mean, that's quite something for back then.
Yep.
And he was a super success, and so he created and he wrote this book called Beach Money and so far and so on. And I was very, very enthused by it. And that whole book, and I don't mean to say I talk about that book all the time. I'm probably responsible for a lot of his sales. Little joke, but it's really heavy on the vision. I thought, okay, well, great, I did it, and I did it. I did this whole thing on my vision, and I realized, okay, you've got your vision, but what about what else? You know, where's the foundation? So I've been to school, I've been to university, I've read books, I've been through the school of hard knocks, and I put together the rest of the things. What's my purpose? Why am I doing it? What's my objective? What am I going for? Well, okay, so, you know, consider it like an upside down pyramid where the vision is your big, broad statement. It's what you're going to do in years. And really fast, it's sort of like if you go into the future and you turn around, you go, what have I accomplished? You know, it's sort of like you're kind of dreaming, like maybe even making a movie of, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. It's what you're doing. What do you see yourself accomplishing? You know, and I put it together. I'm podcasting, I'm interviewing millionaires and billionaires. I'm being interviewed like crazy. I've got millions of downloads. I just wrote it all out, you know, really put that together. And then, well, why? Why do you want it? Why is that important? It's not going to go anywhere if you just go, I want to make money. What's your purpose? Who are you on this? What's the substance? And it goes down, then there's a purpose, and then there's the objective. What are you going for? What is it you want to accomplish? You know, I've written a couple of books. I'm an Amazon bestseller, you know, blah, blah, blah. I've done these. And you just take it down step by step. What's your strategy? You know, which is a really, I see, is missing when you're going after something. Let me put it in military terms. You know, there's an island, and it's very important to control a particular island as it's a big seafaring corridor, and you want it. So there's be your strategy. Okay, we need to control this area. Well, you got your strategy. What's your tactical steps? How are you going to take that mountain? How are you going to take that island? What are those tactical steps? And you start writing out what would be the tactical steps done. And I hope this is kind of clear. I mean, I teach it. It's a lot to say. It's a mouthful to say in a couple of minutes. But basically, I go down and down on a couple points, how to make money at it. You know, having all this together doesn't do any good if there's nothing you can sell, if there's nothing you put together. So I work all these steps. There's about 8 steps. And at the very end, you're down to, what do I do to What do I do today? What needs to happen? What, your daily things. And there's where the rubber meets the road, from your dream vision all the way
Yeah.
down to getting things done. A lot of people have different ways that they gamify it, but it really, really works. I can go more in depth into it, but that's kind of what I put
Thank you
together
for sharing
to
that.
make that successful.
Yeah, I mean, I like that. I mean, to me, I mean, what you just said is kind of really the only way to accomplish any goal in life, which is to break it down into smaller, bite-sized chunks, all the way down to what am I doing today? And this is how I do my goals. I have like my long-term, I have my ultimate goal, like, like crazy, big, huge, hairy, whatever you want to call it. There's a lot of, and then I have like, okay, in a year, like, where do I realistically, where do I think I can get? What can I do? And then I start really breaking it down into like, okay, this is a month. What is it? And then I get down to, okay, this week, like every Monday I open up and I say, okay, this week, these are my top priorities. I am going to get them done. And I make a commitment to myself, and they're all based on the ultimate and the longer and the midterm goals, because if you don't have that, then you're just like a ship without a rudder and you're being pulled in all these different directions. You're like, oh, that looks good. That looks good. I'm going to do that. Oh, I'm going to go that way. Oh, that guy just posted, he's doing this. I'm going to try that. But if you know exactly where you want to go and you break it down into steps, like it's just a matter of following through, and then goes back to that, what we talked about earlier, the persistence aspect, and just making sure that you have a system to hold yourself accountable, whether it's an accountability buddy, whether it's your own maybe accountability device, like the app that I'm working on that's going to help with that, right? Or something. But you've got to figure out a way to say, okay, this is the commitment I'm making and I'm going to stick to it. And if you don't, then you figure out a way to get it done and make it up the next week. For me, I'll do nights sometimes. I like to relax at night, and I try not to work. But if I know that if I don't work this evening and get some stuff done, then I'm not going to be able to meet my goal for the end of the week. And I'll reduce the friction. I'll gamify it a bit, right? I'll put the TV on and I'll have, be sitting by the fireplace, or have like a nice setting to where I've got my laptop and it's cozy. I'm not sitting in my dark office. So there's ways to, to do that and give myself little, I call it temptation bundling. Well, I'll give myself little rewards. Like, okay, if I get through this tonight, then I'm going to give myself this treat, or I'm going to allow myself to take off half of the day on Friday and go, play paddle or play golf or whatever it is. And that just helps to kind of, again, trick my brain into being able to help push through. Because even if you love what you're doing, like we were talking about earlier, that's such an important part of it. And I do love what I'm doing. You're going to have days and you're going to have times when you're just like, this is tough. But you got to push through, right?
That's where the purpose comes in. And you mentioned earlier, the passion, these are just words we're saying. If I said to your audience, anybody, eggs, milk, vanilla, salt, sugar, it's like, yeah, okay, I know those words. But I challenge you to go into your kitchen right now and make me a delicious chocolate souffle. It's a whole different thing. So we're saying these words, but I got to tell you, I'll give you a case in point, because these are so important. I taught someone the vision map, and at the time he had a health product on Amazon. He was doing 5 sales a month. Okay, 5 a month. In the second month with working with me, he had gotten up to 12 sales a day. I took another podcaster to millions of downloads. It really works, but it's that focus in it, and it's having that foundation and that substance, because it's almost, it kind of not quite perpetual motion, but as you work it, you keep working it because you work it, and it just kind of you roll into it. Fortunately, I haven't gotten burnt out on it, and I think that's because I really like what I do, and that's why we talked about earlier. You've got to really like what you do. There's got to be more than just the money.
Absolutely, because right at the end of the day, that money is there's a certain amount you need to live and survive, and there's going to be things that you want But then if you're not careful, it's going to be, there's always something more that you want. And you're always trying to keep up with the Joneses. And okay, I made $1 million. Wow, I hit my goal. Yeah, but that guy's got 2 million, or that guy's, I remember one of the best examples of this is I listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast. Have you ever heard his podcast? Tim Ferriss show. It's a good one. He interviews a lot of successful people as well. And I remember him interviewing a guy where this guy was a billionaire and he was talking about his jet. And he wasn't bragging, but the context he put it in was similar to what we're talking about now, where he said, you know, it hit me just how obsessed this culture and even I got into it, even though I was aware of it, when I had bought a jet, like a lifetime goal last year. And he's like, it was the best feeling in the world. And I was like, I did it, and I own my own jet. And then he said the following year, he saw this other billionaire that had the newer version of that just got the newer version of his jet. And he said he remembered being like, my jet's stinky. You know, it's like, and that's an extreme example, but we do that every day. Like, oh, my iPhone, oh, I got the 12, I need the 13, I need the 14. It's like, it's insane that this is the system that we're living in, and that this is kind of how our brains are now programmed, right? I mean, we always, since primal times, have wanted more and more and more. That's just, you know, an instinctual thing. But the fact that if we're not aware of it, not being happy with what we have and being grateful and just chasing the more, that's a dangerous place to live.
It's a never-ending trap. It never stops. Trying to get more and more, just it consumes one. I've seen some people, they're totally consumed by what they have, the latest and greatest, and it's like, you know, I'm having the best time of my life. Why? Well, my refrigerator is full of food. You know, my vehicles are all gassed up. My wife is happy. It's like, you know, maybe it's a little bit of an Italian in there, but it's like, I'm very happy with what I have. And it's just, everything keeps going. You got to be grateful for something. I don't want the latest and greatest phone. Please, I'm happy. I'm happy as long as they keep servicing, you know, I keep getting the updates and service. I'm good. I'm just, you have to get to a point where you're content, and it can be a hard pill to swallow. It's very important because you never become happy. You know, I've had, you know, the $1 million, you know, custom built home in a way on a golf course. I've had all this, and, oh, but you want more, or this or that. It just never ends. And it becomes mad. It becomes part of the madness.
100% right. And so, yeah, you said a lot of millionaires and billionaires. Is this a common theme that you've heard from them?
No, we really don't get into it. I get into their life and how and why or how they got into what they do, yeah. And how they created their vision, how they created their path, and how they went into something, and what they've learned from it. And we go into that. But we never talk about toys or what people have. Very, very rare do we go into, do you have the latest and greatest? Because I'm not all about that. I'm just down to, here's a person that persevered. Some, you know, they could have inherited the business. They could have kind of fell in at the right time in the right place, but they still took actions to make it successful. You just don't show up, even if you're at the right time, right place. You just don't show up and have everything done for you. No, you got to do some work.
Yeah, no, I hear you. And so I guess just speaking on, and by the way, let me just clarify, it's still okay to have goals and to want to, you know, make a lot of money. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. All I'm saying is, and I think you're saying this too, you just need to be aware of, you know, okay, like, what is my goal? And at what point do I go, okay, I have the house I want to live in. I have the car I want to drive. I can go on vacations. I have freedom. Versus just the more and more and more. So it's okay to chase. So let's talk about some of these people that you interview. What are some of the most common strategies or the most common characteristics of these people that you see have been able to allow them to get to where they were?
You've probably heard this before, but everyone needs to hear it again with new ears. The biggest overriding factor in hundreds of people I've interviewed and they've made big success is their ability to persist and not give up. They've failed. I've interviewed somebody who's homeless. I've interviewed several people, everything crashed. They've had nothing, 300, what is it? Hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And they're big, I'm trying to think of the story. And I probably butchered it a little bit, but just give me some huge debt, and their client can no longer pay them the a couple $100,000 that they owe them, and they're out of business. That's it. It's over. So what did they do as an example? Well, what do you have that we can do something with? Well, he's got a vineyard. So they turned around and they created the #1 wine in the world, barefoot wine. It's just like they took this and they figured out, well, how can I do something with it? They just kept at it, and it's persistence over and over. But the stories that these people tell, and I don't mean it that way, these amazing, successful, I call them elite entrepreneurs. Not that they run the world, but they've made it to a high level. They're what and who we want to aspire to be as well. And they've really pushed through, and they tell these great stories of how they've made it. And I just one of my shows recently, a movie star, she filmed, I'm trying to think, like 20 movies in the past 2 years. This is quite something, 20 films. Well, at 16 years old, she went in a film, and she didn't make it. She didn't make it in the film. They took her out. So she was nothing. She was out. She was out of it. But she persisted. And it's these stories. We don't tell this. They don't tell the stories necessarily to inspire or motivate. But when you get it and you understand what they had in front of them and how they pushed forward, it very much so is inspiring and motivating. It's so many have just failed. And they kept failing, and just as we talked about, they just kept at it. Some of them don't know failure.
So I feel like what we're talking about here, it's the difference between being, I call it a growth owner versus a fixed victim, but it's having that, a growth owner to me is, I have the mindset of, I know that I have everything within me to kick ass, take names. Obstacles are temporary roadblocks waiting for solutions. Eventually I will make it to where I want to go, and I'm going to fail along the way, but I'm going to fail forward, and I'm going to learn from my mistakes, versus the fixed victim, right? That's, poor me, my brain's broken, I was born a certain way, there's nothing I can do about it. My lot in life is my lot in life. And, maybe I'll win the lottery one day, and that'll be the best thing ever, and that'll solve all my problems, right? Like looking for an outside external force to solve your issues because you don't think that you have it within you. And I mean, that's really everything. And I think that's the theme of the show. And I'm really glad that we kind of nailed this concept of persistence and just basically saying, I've got it, and I'm going to do it, and there's nothing going to stop me. I'm telling you, everybody watching, everybody that Tony's interviewed, I'm sure he'll agree with this. Like, you got to have that. That's like the #1 common theme of anybody ever that's made it, that's been successful in whatever way you want to use that term. And, whether it's success in your 5 cores, your health, your physical health, your emotional health, your career and finances, your mindset, your relationships, you got to have that mindset and everything. So, Tony, thank you so much for being with us. Can tell us where we can find you, where people can learn more about you and listen to some of your episodes.
If you go to TonyDurso.com, TonyDurso.com, you'll see my podcast there. You'll find out about perhaps my webinar. It'll probably be advertised there. My first webinar ever that I'm going to do. And you'll be able to reach me there. You'll see my social media there. And again, it's the best place to listen to any show. I'm on Spotify and Apple and all these places. But the 7 years of all my podcasts, that's the one place where you can go anything, and you can even search, have I ever interviewed, for example, Jay Conrad Levinson is the founder of Guerrilla Marketing. Well, I've interviewed, I think, 5 of his proteges, people that he taught, and then so there's a search feature there, and you can, search sales, search marketing, search motivation, search whatever, see what comes up. It's very interesting stuff. So that's a good recommend.
Awesome. Well, yeah, I'm on your website now. You've interviewed some amazing people. I may actually hit you up to do some exchanges, because we both work hard to get great guests. So maybe we can help each other connect with some of our guests. I might reach out to you for that. Thank you so much for being on the show. This was awesome. I really appreciate it. I'm glad the technology worked out and we were able to make it happen. Thank you for being flexible and getting this going. And thanks everybody for tuning in. Gamify your life. Learned a great habit today. Number 1 habit. What is it? Persistence. Persistence, persistence, persistence. You got to have it. You got to do it. Think about ways that you can be persistent, that you can trick your brain into holding yourself accountable. Use your personality, your DNA, your strengths, your weaknesses, your passions to do it. All right, Tony. Well, thank you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Bye.
That's it for the Gamify Your Habits podcast with Will Moore. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and be sure to visit moremomentum.com to learn how you can gamify your life.